project here. I stopped because it's a good stopping point to let you see the entire process. So this is where I had my countertop, the secondary one that I keep my water and other miscellaneous stuff on. And I temporarily screwed it down last year because I knew the boards were going to twist and warp and possibly snap as they did on that counter. But this one's actually pretty solid. Still, the boards are not flat, and I need to flatten them now. They've had a chance to dry out. They've been on here for a year, over a year, I think. Here's a construction technique. I've got my, as you can see, we do like a treehouse style construction. We're not screwing into the tree. We're wrapping it with this pressure treated wood, and then I've got these two pieces of all thread. This is Matt's design. He saw it someplace and liked it, so he built the kitchen originally this way, and I've been adding on to it. So previously we had this style countertop, which was cut off ends of the decking boards that were left over from when I built the decks, and that was what we used for the countertops for years. And you can see how there's where the board was, and here's where there was no board. But last year I had that aspen tree that I needed to pull down. I have another big one this year that I need to start milling up. And that afforded me the ability to put some nice slab countertops on here. Now the wood was wet, and I didn't want to immediately slap it down and secure it. I wanted it to have a chance to dry and cure. And if anything like splitting was going to happen, I didn't have a whole lot of time invested in it. So I did a cursory plane on it using my electric planer, and it gave it a pretty smooth surface. I then hit it with 40 and I think 60 grit sandpaper. So those were secured here. This year I invested in a router sled. And so the router sled, I kind of screwed up and I didn't read the instructions. I wish I had left these long. They were 60 inches long, and I cut them down because I thought they went inside of here, and unfortunately they don't. They go outside. So I could have had a massive router sled, but instead I have this one. Now it's designed, it's got two neoprene wheels, and it's designed to roll on the top of my picnic table. Actually cut these too short and wound up having to squish my picnic table together, but I got it tuned in now, and it does an amazing job. And then this slides back and forth, so you can see the operation. The board will be sitting in here, do one pass, move it down, do another pass, move it down, do another pass, and that takes the board from this state. This is what it looked like. I did do an oil coat on this, but it was out in the weather, and that's the underside, so a little bit nicer. So it's got some cracks in it, and it has got an amazing bow in the top. I don't know if you can see that, but this area right here in the center is high. We're going to fix that with our router sled. And so I took the other piece, which is finished and ready for oil. This is the bottom of it. This is the worst side, and I have it on the bottom so that you can see the difference between a router sled and a plane. Every plane, hand planer, you need to adjust to make sure that the blade, the cutting blades, are completely flat. And obviously mine is not. It's deeper on one end than it is on the other. So it's in there skewed. I could fix it, but I don't have the fine tools. So instead, oh, I got a dead bug on here already. Instead, I cleaned it up with my router sled and then just some cursory sanding. And you can see the difference. That's before, and this is the top side, and this is after, and that's the top side. So we're going to take this from that to that. Okay, I've got this swept off, got all the hemlock leaves and bugs and whatnot off it, but I just wanted you to see what I'm trying to take out of this board so that it is flat on top and will marry up with the other board. And so take a look. I don't know if that's coming across on the video. Let's do it this end. There is a definite bow in the top of this board. So I'm less worried about the bottom. Ideally, I should plane both the top and the bottom, but I'm short on time here. So I'm going to just focus on the things that matter and the things that people can see. I did take a notch off of the end of this. I don't know if you can see that, because this actually was pretty tight to the tree, and I don't want this to cut into the tree. So I left about 1/4 of an inch gap on either end where it sits next to the tree. That should allow the tree to grow and expand without damaging the tree. And if I need to, I can always come back and cut another deeper notch in there. So I'm going to flip this over and get working on it. So the first step is to figure out the rails can only come down to roughly here, because I got that little notch out of the end of the picnic table. So it's going to run to about there. I want to make sure I've got room for the router sled to catch it. So let's just kind of roughly position. And what I've been doing is straddling one of these holes, the cracks in the picnic table, so that I can secure this from the bottom. I want to be able to run a board across underneath and then screw up through into the base of this, so that I get a good solid connection to the table, so it is not moving around in any way, shape, or form. I don't need this thing slipping while I've got a rapidly spinning very large bit. Just to give you an example of what I mean by very large, there's the router bit. It's massive. It's a 2-inch flattening bit. So I want to make sure that I have a very solid connection, and the first step in that is to see, is there any tip? This end is actually pretty good. Do we have any tip up here? And we do have tip up here. So down there, so that means we got a little twist in the board. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of try to, there we go, see if I can take that rocking, that side-to-side rocking out. And is it still solid down here? It is. All right, so that gives me a flat, immovable surface. It's not going to roll around as I'm doing this router sledding. So let's move the router sled. Oh God, my fingers are rattling. So let's move the router sled down, and we'll check the. Yep, see, that's why I wanted to check it. It's too close to the edge. So I need to push this back up until I have enough of a buffer. Look at this all upside down. Let me see. So I've got maybe 2 inches there, maybe 2 inches there before that cut. And I am all the way at the end of the board with my router head. So that's a good position to put the board in. Up here, we got plenty of space. So if we slide it all the way up here, we got plenty of space up on this end. And I'm using my EcoFlow River, my River 2 Max kilowatt battery here. This thing is, all right, it's at 52%. That router uses about 200 watts, and this is a 1,000-watt battery. So I suspect this is going to pull all the juice out of my battery, but it'll be worth it to get this done. I'm going to do this in a bunch of gradual passes, and we'll come back and take a look at it halfway through so you can see part of the process, and then we'll come back once it's totally flattened. All right, so the board is solid. I've got it secured with these just pieces of scrap wood. There's a single screw. I braced it up against this tabletop brace, and that keeps it from spinning as I screw it in. And I've got another one down here on this end, which you can see. So that is just a temporary thing, but that keeps this from moving at all. That board's not going anywhere. And so now I can start with my router. So what I've done here is I've moved the router bit down It's hard to see here. So I moved it down and set it on the top of the board. Actually, what I probably need to do to start with is find the low spot on the board. And looking at it, it looks like that's over there. So, and then the high spot would be here. So I've got this set pretty close. There's like a 1/8 of an inch, maybe a 1/16. That's where I'm gonna start, and then I'll gradually, I've got plenty of collar left here. So I'm gonna do the entire board with that setting, and then I'll move it down a 1/16 of an inch, 32nd of an inch, depends on how close I am to having this flat. And I'll just keep doing that until I get the board as close to flat as possible, and then sand it back and get it the rest of the way. But you can see how this works. I've got the one roller there that holds it tight to the outside of the table, and then this roller rolls it along the top of the table. Is this an ideal situation? No, I'm probably messing up my picnic table, but as you can see, it needs to be refinished before I leave for the winter. So I'm taking this opportunity to use it as a good 6-foot long workbench, and it's doing a good job for this. So. That's the process. A lot of light passes is much better than trying to do heavy passes. It will just bog this thing down, partially because it's kind of a lightweight palm router. Probably is not designed for this typical sketchy stuff that I do. I work with what I have. But as long as I do light passes, like just taking maybe a 1/2 inch at a time, I don't try to take off too big of a bite, it gets through it with no problem. And then as we get down to where the entire board is more, I'll raise it up so it's taking thinner passes, but then I'll do wider passes, just to speed the process up. It's getting better. This is very rough. It's still surprisingly got some water in it. And this could just be the nature of aspen. I'm not familiar with it. I've worked with it a little bit last year, but it tends to like tear out a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe if I were to flip the router around and come at it from a different direction, the grain might be better, but it's more than likely would just tear out over on this side. What I've been doing is running the router over, finding the next spot that I want to get down to, moving the router over that spot, and then loosening up the arbor, sliding it down, not the arbor, the collar, sliding it down so that it rests on the wood, and then tightening it, moving it back, and then moving and starting on this side. So you can see that maybe you can see that it is just barely gonna catch with the teeth. So this will be the last pass with this, and then I will move on to sanding. All right, we are as far as I'm going to go with the router sled, and it is much, as you can see, much flatter than it was. Is it completely flat? No. I've got several grits of sandpaper from 40 all the way up to I think 120. I'm going to go over this with the sander, and I'll do an initial pass with 40 grit to try and knock off all of this rough stuff where it was chewing it up. And then I'll likely just do this side and the back side. But to do this side, I'm going to leave it bolted to the table. It's still solidly secure, so I can get a nice flat surface. Then I'll detach it from the mounting brackets and then move on to the rest of the sanding. You've seen me do sanding a million times before. I'm just using cheap sandpaper this time. I don't have the lower grits on the really nice Cubitron sandpaper that I normally love. So, but this works just fine. So I'm going to get to it. It's 4 o'clock already, and I need to start thinking about cleaning up and making dinner. All right, so this is the initial sand at 40 grit, and you can see with the combination of the router sled and the rough sanding, and I'm going to do many more passes on this with sanding. But you can see already how it went from a gray, dingy, I don't even think I've got maybe this side, gray, dingy, stained piece of wood. And now it's flat. It is smoother, and it will be much, much smoother by the end of the process. And then we'll coat it with oil. And hopefully once I secure this down, I'll never have to do this again. But I think it did very well with just the single screws. So I think I'm going to try and join these pieces as tightly as I can get them. And then I'm just going to secure them down again with just a single screw. Okay, so I am at the point now where I want to get these ready to go down on the countertop. But what I noticed was I got a gap. Not out here. Don't have a gap there. Don't have a gap there. Now this is likely more warping from the boards. They're going to twist. They're going to like wrench around, and so they have natural stresses in the wood. But what I can do, if I can get these relatively flat, these aren't perfectly flat, but they're pretty close. I can take my circular saw and I can run it up this gap and then do the same over there. And then these will eventually draw in a little bit tighter. So the goal is not to make it perfect. I'm going to get it as perfect as I can without completely messing this up, because I've done a lot of work. I should have done this before I even started the whole flattening and sanding process, but this is where I am. So this is what I'm going to work on. So let me know in the comments if this is the right way to go. I've seen this done before. I've done it on a couple of projects and it seems to work out pretty well. What I'm going to do though is I think I'm going to get some of those wedges and I'm going to wedge underneath this just so it's not rolling around like that. But then I will zip this up and then I'll show you the results afterwards. All right, so I've used some shims here and there, and then one other shim over here. And you can see now it's stable. It's not rocking around. So that's a good place to start. I don't have to worry about the saw wandering because the thing tips while I'm trying to cut it. And I don't have to cut all the way through. I just have to get up to around here and then do the same on the other end. And then I'm going to try the fit again. And it should be much closer. Okay, I hope you can see this is much closer now. Obviously it's rough because I just ruined all the sanding that I did on that one side of the board, but that gap has dramatically closed up. And once I sand out these parts here that I've cut, that'll close in even tighter. Doesn't have to be perfect. As a matter of fact, a little gap in between the boards to allow water to drain out instead of sitting on the surface would actually be preferable. So I'm going to call that good enough. And I'm going to move on to the next stage, which is unfortunately more sanding. I can fix this I did there, fix these little strips along the edge, sand those all flat, then we can get on to finishing. Okay, there it is. I am going to start throwing the sun is well down behind the trees. I should probably wait to finish this, but I am going to brush this down, get all the dust off, and then I'm going to throw a coat of tung oil on here, cover all 4 sides. The bottom needs to be coated as well. The top will get a polyurethane coat. The bottom will just get a heavy wax coat of my homemade finish, just so that both sides are sealed. Otherwise, there can be a tendency, I think, for water to penetrate from one side of the wood. That side swells and it makes it cup or tip. So, which is probably what happened last year, which is why this was all messed up because the water was laying on here. It swelled up, and then it, you know, it did what it's going to do, which is this side swelled more than the bottom side, so it cupped. I guess I don't know if there's a word for inverse cupping. There is still a lot of roughness here. It's going to be out in the weather, and I'm going to have 3 coats of polyurethane on this, so I'm going to leave that and call it quote-unquote character. When I put these together, I'll use some shims underneath the low spots to support them so that it marries up and is flat across the surface. But time for some oil. All right, here's the oil coat. I think you would agree that this looks so much better than it did before. But I mix up, like I said, mineral spirits. I had to do some rubbing alcohol because I was low on mineral spirits, and then tung oil. But the tung oil it's a really thick oil. I like the penetration that it gets, and I like the water fastness that it gets, but it's a really, really thick oil. So I just put it on and I flood it. I literally will pour it onto the wood and then brush it around. And if it puddles up, I just keep moving the puddles around until it completely soaks into the wood. And then I'll leave it. This is going to rest overnight. I'm going to use a rag so I don't get it all over my hands. I put especially heavy coats on the end grain, and anywhere where I cut the wood, like where I had to bind these things together right there, I try and get it to soak into those open pores. Because if there's not oil in there, there can be water in there. And then tomorrow, I'll start the long process. Once this is dry, I'll come out in the morning and I will inspect every single side of it. And if it's not completely dry to the touch, I will wipe it down with a clean paper towel to get off the pooled oil. There is plenty of oil on all sides, all 6 sides of these boards. I coated thoroughly with oil, and it's already soaked in. Like I can see that there's still some on the surface, but I would be willing to bet when I come out here tomorrow, that will not be there anymore. All right, so coat of tung oil, dried overnight, wiped down to get the excess off, and then I've got this can of very expensive wipe-on polyurethane, which honestly I think is just regular polyurethane with some mineral oil in it. It's thinned down. It does soak into the wood very rapidly, and it does dry pretty quickly. So, but I have some just straight up fast drying polyurethane that I'm going to use for my top coats after this first initial coat. I just put it on. I don't know if you can see a gloss on this. It's a satin, a warm satin finish, which gives it a little bit of a yellow color, and it will be pretty much semi-gloss. But I'm going to let that coat completely dry. It might take an hour and a half. Then I'm going to do another light sand by hand with 180 grit sandpaper. You gotta be careful, there's like trees all around. So things can fall on this while it's still sticky. I'm going to let this dry completely. I'm going to do a light sand. Then I'm going to do 2 more coats, allowing it to dry completely in between each coat so that I can get a good durable finish on this countertop. Focusing especially on the cracks to soak the urethane down into the cracks, and the end grain and cut pieces, such as where I had to plane down these sides to get them tighter. The other multitasking project I'm going to do while those are drying is I need to refinish at least the front part of this countertop. The back part I am going to rip down. Oops. I'm going to rip down a new board and just tear this one off, and it's going to get turned into, part of it will be a table, part of it will be firewood. But the front part's still good. I've got the scribe mark here, so I don't really want to use the router sled, because if I route it, I'm going to take off too much material, and then it's going to change the dimensions of the scribe. It won't fit tight against the table anymore. So I am going to just sand this one. I'm going to start with 40 grit. I'll do a heavy sand with 40 grit. I may even lap onto this one back here just to clean it up a little bit for the time being until I can get the new piece. Then I'm going to go through the same process. I'll oil it, let it sit overnight, then I'll do 3 coats of poly, then I'll do a wax coat on top. And this one will be somewhat finished. I may wind up ripping this whole thing off and putting on a new countertop when I have seasoned wood. But for now, I'm just going to try and make the front of this look better than it does. Okay, so done with 40 grit, moving on to 60 grit. But I started to think about this. Before I get too far into this, I want to take out this corner around this tree because I'm going to have to saw it out of there. I'm going to use a Japanese pull saw. I've got a jigsaw, but it wouldn't be able to get up tight to the tree without me taking these boards off, which I don't want to do. And I'm not good with jigsaws. They always do a very rough cut. They never cut the way I want them to. I know I'm probably just using them wrong, but I don't want to be frustrated today. So I'm going to real quick get my Japanese pull saw and zip this corner out. And there it is. Perfect cut every time. All right, I'm going to work on the other side now. Perfect cut every time. Love this saw. All right, back to sanding. I always have my headphones in. I'm listening to a little Ray Charles right now, which is actually very good sanding music. Highly recommend it. Okay, so final sanding is done. I wiped this all down and brushed it first with a brush. You probably saw me do that in time lapse. I wiped it all down with a soft cloth, and it's a cloth I've used to sop up the tongue oil before, and so it has a little bit of it in the fibers, which helps to act as like a tack cloth. But my hands are coming away clean. They're vibrating because of all the sanding, but they're coming away clean. So now it's time to throw my oil coat on, and I've got some tongue oil, and it's mixed up with the same stuff that I used over on the other shelf. So it's a little bit of mineral spirits and a little bit of rubbing alcohol mixed together as a thinning and penetrating agent, and then the tongue oil to coat the surface. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that on. I'll do that also in time lapse, and then that's going to have to be it for tonight. All right, I almost forgot to film this. So this is the secondary counter where I keep my water and miscellaneous stuff. It is exposed. There's no roof over it. So this has got an oil coat, which I did on that countertop just 20 minutes ago. I did this yesterday after planing it, sanding it, figuring out how to balance it so that it's flat. And then I did an oil coat. I let it dry overnight. I did 2 coats of polyurethane today, scuffing it up in between coats. Then I did a wax coat with oil on the top of it. This is not exactly what I wanted to do. I was going to do 3 coats of polyurethane, and on the table that I did, the last coat was a flood coat where I just literally poured it and squeegeed it around. But it takes so long to dry, and I honestly don't know if it adds value because I forced the poly down into all of the cracks. I got all of the sides. I don't know that it's going to add a lot of value to do that. So I'm going to let this go as is. 2 coats of poly, a coat of oil, and a coat of oil and wax, which is heavy on the wax. I had it out in the sun, and it wouldn't dry. But I'm guessing back here under the trees, especially once it gets a chance to settle in, it will harden up. So I have these shims. I found that the bottom was tippy. I thought it was just one, but it was actually both of them. The bottom was tippy. So I added these shims to level it out, and then I have just a single screw. I don't know if you can see that, but a single screw on it, just because, again, it's outside. The wood is possible that it's going to move. If there's any cover that I missed and water gets inside, the wood can move. If it's tightly bound down, then that is going to lead to it splitting and cracking. If it cups or it bows, I can fix that. If it cracks, I'm in the same situation I am over there, and I've got to rip it off and cut a new piece. And this is hand milled lumber, so I don't want to have these split. So I caught it before I finished. I'm going to put the next piece on. It's going to be the same exact process. I'm going to carry it up. I have gloves on because I left the oil coat on the bottom of it really heavy. I did not wipe it back. I want it to have extra protection under there, and nothing is going to fall on it. So that should absorb into the wood. I did not poly that side. I left that side open just because I know this wood hasn't finished completely drying yet, which is why it cupped a little bit. And so theoretically, with the poly on all of the 5 sides, and the one side open, I'm guessing this is going to give me my best chance of it not snapping and cupping and warping and breaking. It's an experiment. We'll see if that's the truth. So I'm going to go get the other piece. I'm going to get this mounted. This has an oil coat on it. I sanded it all back, but as you can see, even though it looks dry, when you run your finger along it, let's see if I can get some light on my finger here. So no oil. So you can see there is still oil that has not penetrated down into the surface. that will be done based on my experience with that countertop. That'll be done tomorrow. I've got to work tomorrow, but I'm going to put everything up here. I'm going to try and do as much of my food prep and stuff. I'm going to probably just have a sandwich or something simple. I'll do the food prep over there, stay off this counter, and then tomorrow I'll take the few items that I had to put back up on it off, and I'll run through my, after work, run through my polyurethane. Hopefully I'll be able to get 2 coats of poly on it at the end of the day. I'm kind of stoked this is working. So I got this end secured. It's a pretty tight gap. And then this end was gapping. And so what I did was, I've got what they call a cull. This is just a disposable piece of wood. I'm on an angle here, so I needed something that I could press up in there, get the clamp around. I'm going to try and tighten it a little bit. I don't want to tighten it too much because it'll eventually get to the point where it's going to start to push up. I think that's good enough. I'm going to move the water bottle down here to hold it from moving up. And then when I put the screw in, that'll pull it back down into place. I'm excited. This is going to work. After much thought, work with a router sled, sanding, and patience, I was able to turn this old weathered countertop I installed last year into a finished product that I can be proud of for years to come, hopefully. With fall approaching and summer winding down, I needed to bang out these final projects before the season was over. When I added these countertops last year, I knew the wood was somewhat wet when I screwed it down, and that I'd likely have to refinish them in the upcoming summer. I thought that the oil coat that I put on last year would provide a little bit better protection, but obviously the weather and the elements got to it and grayed that countertop up. But after sanding and finishing this and putting on the polyurethane coats, hopefully next year I won't have the amount of labor that I had this year. If you find these videos interesting, like and subscribe, leave a comment, and click the bell icon to make sure you're notified each time that I upload a new video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here.